Well, I think government's got a question. It's got to ask itself a question. If it wants national policing, and it needs national policing, it needs ACPO. It's as simple as that. And the Home Secretary has been very helpful in making sure that this financial year we have enough money to operate in the way we're currently structured, which is, ACPO head office. That's me. And all the work being carried out by chief officers and their teams and officers from the supers and the feds, developing policy which comes to the centre to be signed off. That will continue. I'm confident that will continue because it has to continue. The real question is, how do you take it on in a more positive way looking forward, and how do you join up what we do as final arbiters of decision making, and how do we develop an institute that actually recognises for the first time in our history that policing is a profession and the people in it are already professionals that deserve to be recognised. Well, I think the real learning and the real structure of today was very helpful to that debate. We had the policing minister, we had ACPO, we have a superintendent association, and an expert from another country, Chuck Wexler, who's a good friend of the service, contributing to that debate. I think what came out of that is, firstly, the minister is keen for this to move on now. Secondly, I'm hopeful that they will release the consultation papers so we can all absorb what other people were thinking. And third, a recognition that to move it on, the whole service has to be engaged. And the way of doing that, I think, is to distill out of the Police Institute the final decision-making body that is currently undertaken by ACPO, so actually then everyone can look at this as something that they should be proud to belong to, and is not tied up in final decisions around critical police business, but is around professionalising the service, recognising the skills of our officers, and making sure they get properly trained and developed as they progress through their careers. Well, there has to be a time frame. I mean, we are moving very quickly. The NPIA, we are told, will end in 2012. That's your time frame. What we have to do is work with government to make sure they understand the complexity of the world within the NPIA, and we look at how we then move those particular critical national tasks on. We have the embryonic stages I described, I think, of Lord Wasserman's ideas around IT. They are still embryonic. We have Peter Fahey doing a huge amount of work, only just started, on all the leadership and training. We have the debate around the police estate, we have all the other issues, all the other databases which need to be looked at. So lots of work and lots of lack of clarity at the moment, and we have to move that on, and government has to grip this and move it on very quickly. We will support them, but it was their decision to get rid of the NPIA, so they must bear a responsibility for leading the successor organisations. Otherwise, what's the point of us doing it? They may not like what we want. They must have a plan. Well, you've always got to be concerned. Chief officers, the people I represent, take the health and welfare of their people very seriously. We may not be good at articulating that all the time. Likewise, everyone is working under extreme pressure. Chief officers are working, very long hours, as are superintendents, as are many frontline officers. That's, I think, where the pressure is on the public sector generally, not peculiar necessarily to policing. But of course we take it seriously, and that's why Derek got such a round of applause for his frankness and his honesty, which means we can take that back and look at it. Well, I'm not sure it's metaphorical. I think it's a really good idea. I think two things that Derek, it shows just how much value it is having ACPO and all the superintendents invited to this conference, because much of the wisdom of the service and much of the wisdom in the development of policy and practice led by ACPO is done by superintendents in forces working to chief officer lead. So it shows the value of the new structure of the conference, and of course the feds were invited as well, but unable to come due to PMB work. So I think we're looking at a very dynamic change process. I think the idea of an independent person to drive and knock heads together is a very good one. I think the Federation is absolutely up for conversation, and I think the superintendents are. So if it needs us to get into a room and thrash out where the commonalities lie, and then deal with where the differences are, we could move this on quite quickly. It will need some seed cord funding, and again, I thought the Minister was vaguely constructive around that. There's not lots of money, we understand that, but if we're going to move this on, and move it on quickly, it will need some funding before we can work out how we fund it into the future.